things.
Especially for back to the general fund, and just sees it somewhere else.
Yes.
Because we generally don't spend.
Right, now this will come up in election years, election, outside election. Right. So.
Is Jay?
He is not. He was in Great Falls doing some continuing education.
I'm sure I commit suicide. Just slicing my nose.
Cold up there, man.
I don't know if it's any colder.
Well, I'm glad.
Actually, kind
I'm glad I
of.
did.
Actually, like,
Uh-oh.
yeah,
Oh my God, I just saw two last week.
Me too.
The whole world heard it.
Oh, no. Oh, that's right, yeah. National TV.
We're live.
I warned you.
Good evening. Good evening. There's a warmer over there.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah, is this the, remember now during comments, the flower lady, as
Sure.
we called it?
Yeah, I think I actually brought you the appropriate name too.
That-
So we don't.
Well, I guess I definitely have some questions, just a major question on it.
Sure, and I don't know a lot about it, so yeah. Be a good discussion.
What's this, like baskets?
Yeah, no, the triangle.
Oh, down at the park.
So that wasn't your house that was on fire a couple weeks ago, Matt?
What's that?
It wasn't your house that was on fire a couple weeks ago?
Next block down.
Oh, okay.
Quite a,
Somebody told me it was yours, and so I walked down there and I'm like,
no. Same side of the street, but different block.
okay.
And I did, at the time I thought so, they had no idea what the problem was.
Huh,
Yeah,
so there was actually no fire?
Just, that's where it was when I left them.
Well, that's good.
But they were right on it. Yeah.
You ready?
Everyone?
This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Friedman,
Here.
Commissioner Sandberg. Present. Commissioner Reilly.
Here.
We'll now have a moment of silence. Okay, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business. Hold on, reorganizing for a second. Consent items, A, B, and C. Do we have any consent items that we'd like to pull for discussion? Do we have a motion for consent items A, B, and C?
I'll make a motion to approve consent items A, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg. Four. Commissioner Reilly.
Yes.
Motion passes. We have no proclamations, we have no scheduled public comment, and no public hearings. We have one ordinance, ordinance number 2067, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending section 8-5 of the Livingston Municipal Code entitled Daily Account of Funds Collected Monthly Report Contents, and specifically amending the procedure, content, and time of the City Court monthly report. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a change to our current ordinances on how the city court reports to the commission. You can see the changes outlined on page 30 under section E-5. It shows you the strike-throughs and then the bold of the changes. The main changes are changes the requirement from the first meeting to the second meeting. The reason for that is to allow the finance office and the court to get everything settled so that they can provide. So it would be, this meeting would be the January settlement. So it gives them the 3 weeks to get that taken care of. We changed the word present to submit, just so there's no confusion that the judge would actually have to show up to the meeting. So they just need to submit the report to the commission, which will be included in the packet. And then we changed the wording a little bit to make sure that the things that the audit was requesting would be included in the report. So the reconciliation from the city finance officer is a big portion of that. So that will meet the write-up that was in the audit for the last 2 years. So we are looking at trying to get this, once it's passed, it should be instituted shortly after that. The judge and finance office have already been working on making sure that a report format and the procedures for that would be worked out. So I would expect this to start within the next month or so, and we will be able to report after this is approved by the commission.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll start with public comment. Is there any public comment? Any public comment on resolution number, I lost the number, 2067. Sorry. On that. I'm sorry, I'm off my game here. On ordinance 2067 instead of resolution 2067. Is there any public comment? Commissioner comments? Sarah?
So, I wasn't aware this was in our ordinance. So, so it's prompting my next question of the fact that it was never being followed to begin with. So is it the response, where is so we have it in ordinance, it hadn't been followed before. What now do we expect is going to help make sure that we can enforce this ordinance?
I think so there's not an actual, enforcement gets tricky when it's an elected official. So there's, you can't call the judge to real quick. However, in this case, I think this is something we've worked out with Judge, and she's willing to do. So I think it's really just a collaborative way to do this. So both parties agree that this is the best way to do it, and that they would go forth and do it. Really, the only way to enforce it is for the commission to call the judge before them and say, "Why aren't you following this ordinance?" Because obviously the city manager has no authority over the judge.
Right. And then did anything else as well come out of the complaint that we had filed earlier?
I think it went away with the
It just went away with the election. Okay. So I'm just, again, trying to understand the protocol. So as the judge is being an elected official, is there anything in her oath of office that she takes or in her requirements that state she has to follow the city ordinances?
It's the same oath you would take as a commissioner, that you would follow the ordinances and the Constitution of the state of Montana.
So okay, great. So she does say she'll follow the city ordinances, or he or she.
Yes.
The position. Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? So as far as an agreement, is it a signed agreement with the judge, or is it a spoken agreement or a plan?
It was just a collaborative process of actually coming up with this wording we did with the judge. So this is a joint outcome of what we both sat down and thought was the best option.
Thank you. Any other final comments? No? Do I have a motion from the commission on ordinance number 2067?
I make a motion to pass ordinance number 2067. I'll second.
A motion by Friedman, a second by Navy. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hogan,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Or
Commissioner Mayhew.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And just an administrative note, since it is an ordinance change, you'll see it again. It'll come back before you again. for public hearing.
Next on our agenda is resolution number 4780, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, allowing the Livingston Fire Chief to impose a temporary ban on outdoor burning within the corporate, sorry,
Limits.
I have new contact in my eyes, guys, and they're still adjusting, so I apologize. Within the corporate limits of the City of Livingston, Montana. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this resolution is, basically the commission is delegating this responsibility down to Chief McInnes. What we found in the past, and I think on more than one occasion, is a fire ban, if it needs to be instituted, is a time-sensitive thing. And so trying to call an emergency meeting of the commission is a more challenging than allowing the chief to make that decision. Similar in the county, who makes the decision in the county, chief?
Ultimately, it's Chief Babcock, he generally runs it through.
But it goes through
They
the
meet.
county, but they meet twice a week.
But they meet
so
twice
it's
a
little
week, yes.
different.
So, so it's similar. Obviously, I think we've only looked to institute this once each summer, I think, for the last 2 summers. Once we got it accomplished, once we had rained before we got it accomplished, so we didn't have to do it. So it's just really a safety issue to try and make sure that if that decision needs to be made, it can be made quickly. And then if we need to bring it before you at the next meeting, we certainly can do that.
Is there any public comment on resolution number 4780? Chief, do you want to give us any feedback?
No, it's a resolution, we must cover everything we got.
Perfect.
Like the city manager said, it can be very time sensitive. Last year was a good example where it was a 5 Tuesday month. And we needed to institute the ban on the Thursday after commission meeting had to make 3 weeks. By that point, it's pretty sensitive out there.
Commissioner comments? Sarah?
So, you know, under the Montana Code, this is the responsibility of the commission. And so I guess in reading this, it's not as if I have it. I understand the premise of it and the idea of the difficulty in gathering a quorum at the last minute. So it's not that I'm not supporting the resolution. I think there's a few things that may be missing. One is in the title of the resolution, it states outdoor burning, but yet in the verbiage, it only refers to bonfires. And so I think we may want to clarify, because that's really only giving the authority for bonfires, where I think sometimes those bans may include open fire pits, charcoal boilers, etc., campfires in the recreational areas. So we may want to add that into the language. And then I also think too, just whenever an entity wants to abdicate their responsibility, I think it's prudent that we supply what our criteria should be. And this just kind of gives a blanket authority to ban, again, I'm not sure exactly what burning because it doesn't delineate it here, but I think we should at least provide some sort of criteria based on whether humidity, you know, the criteria that they would use to come up with that decision. So it's not as if the decision can just be made without any, what I want to say, due process as far as making that decision. There's just nothing listed here how they would come up with that. So those are my suggestions. But I do think it needs to be stated clear what's exactly going to be banned, because it only says bonfires.
If you look at the very last paragraph, now therefore be it resolved,
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a little more specific.
Well, it does say outdoor burn ban, but you know, whereas when it goes into the legal statutes that it's quoting, it owns that statute, if that's all that's listed there, was 7-33-4206, it only refers to bonfires.
In that particular one, and if you look above at 734326, that's the power for emergency measures, for emergency preservation of the public health or safety.
Right, but it doesn't say that that means a fire ban. So it's not clear to me, I guess. Does 733-4206 not include all outdoor burns? Do you know?
That is a specific one for bonfires at any time. It doesn't necessarily have to be an emergency condition. So if you wanted to shut down bonfires, if they're having a school rally, you could say no, no matter what it was. If it was raining, you could still say no.
Right.
Where the 4326 is more of a emergency response kind of language where it says if there is a danger to public health and safety, then you can institute measures. It doesn't say specifically what those measures are. It's meant to be if it's a flood, you know, whatever it happens to be, then those measures are available to be instituted. So you aren't actually, so to be more specific, you aren't delegating all of your authority under 4326, only for outdoor burn within the state. So it's a very small subsection of the broad powers that the state has authorized the commission.
No, I realize all we're talking about is fires.
Right. I'm just
I mean,
saying
I
it falls
understand that.
underneath that code. So it's just a portion of that code.
Because I remember last year, the recommendation to the county was to pass a fire ban, and they voted unanimously not to. And so,
They passed one too.
they passed one later. The first time around, it was not approved. So I'm just trying to look at the what ifs. I mean, whenever you put anything in, anytime you have a resolution or a code or laws, it's, for the 10% of the time that something goes wrong. So I'm just trying to be proactive and looking down the road of, do we want more? I mean, I would prefer to have more clarification on what exactly outdoor burning is, what that encompasses. And I think the public as well, if somebody got a ticket and they said, well, as far as I'm reading this, it's only bonfires. So where did you come up with that I can't grill my steaks outside? To me, that would be a suggestion. And also, I think it would help just to have the criteria listed. I mean, vaguely of what you're going to be looking at to make that determination. So thank you.
Another commissioner comment?
Yeah, you,
Yes, thank you.
I kind of agree with Michael. I like the idea of keeping it vague. I mean, I want to be, it could be cleaned up a little bit, like, where's the bonfires? I think, fires in general, it depends on the conditions, before, they've specifically, when we've had burning bans, this is what we're trying to do. No open fires, even. Yes, you can use your charcoal grill. No, you can't. It's that. So I think the specifics come into play as the conditions dictate. I think we can weigh this down with a lot of language, but that's just my thought on it. Thank you.
Chief, I have a question on Sarah's statement and what Quentin's saying as well. What are the general criteria that are looked at when it comes to imposing a ban?
First of all, we've already got a open burning ordinance in place for things that are not covered, or the bonfire isn't covered under. So that eliminates trash, grilling over an open flame, stuff like that is already covered. This is more for people who want to sit out on a hot August night and have a bonfire in their backyard, which unfortunately does happen. But to the criteria we use, it's done collaboratively between myself, Park County Rural, and the Forestry Service on the fossil or the fine fuels, the 1 hour fuels, and what hazards they present. So it's not just something I think I'll put in the burn ban. We actually talk about it as a group and figure out from there what's appropriate. what we've determined the last 3 years from watching this is we have 3 different climate zones within Park County. There's Paradise Valley, there's the I-90 corridor, which basically goes from the funnel to Yellowstone River on 89 North and Shields Valley. And all 3 of them respond differently. Shields Valley rarely needs a burn ban. Paradise Valley often gets one or needs one sooner than we do. And that's what the county struggles with, is how do they put in a burn ban across the county. For us in the city, when the fine fuels, the real skinny, dry grass that gets really high, it can go from green to brown really, really quickly. And because yard maintenance is not a priority for a lot of people, this can cause a major fire danger within the city fairly quickly. There's a lot of thought put into it before a burn ban will be implemented, because we have to look at all the things that are involved. To Sarah's point about not being able to grill in the backyard, propane barbecues are not a problem. Charcoal barbecues are not a problem. It's things that have an open flame, anything that can generate sparks, which is traditionally bonfires. And that's what we're trying to address. Answer your question?
Can I ask
That will, yeah, yes, that'd be great. Give me one more second. So have we ever imposed on or added to the ban backyard barbecues? Just out of curiosity, I don't recall.
I do.
You do remember? I don't know. I
They
don't
restricted it to barbecues that could be closed. They were okay because it's an open grill and you couldn't.
I think it was like 6 years ago. Really good ban or something.
Again, if it's a charcoal barbecue or a propane fired barbecue, they don't create flying embers, right? It's the wood from fired barbecues, the stuff like a bonfire, anything that's going to create embers that can travel in the wind.
And many times we also include love.
Yes, yeah, a lot of places will write right into their ordinance any kind of hot work outside during the summer.
should add cigarettes put into flower pots, because that apparently is one of the bigger problems, right? Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just asking for clarification on the definition of a bonfire. Is that when you're referring to that, are you referring to the open fire pits as well that people have in their backyards? So do we need that? We need a definition of bonfire then? 'Cause- Or I don't, or.
Usually when we actually institute the burn ban, it'll be very specific. on what you
Yeah,
can.
specific.
So it will say no open outdoor fires to include fire pits, welding, grinding, and it would list out every prohibited thing that you could have. So if we would actually say enclosed barbecue grills are still allowed. So it would be very specific, and so there was no confusion, because that's the big thing, is making sure that people understand, okay, this is allowed, this is not. So it would be exceptionally specific, and it may depend on the conditions of that year, where we may say, okay, no open bonfires, but open grills are still okay with charcoal. So there's some latitude in exactly how the ban is instituted as well. And, and it's all the things Chief's talked about, how much, fine fuel there is, what the humidity is, what the heat is, all those items go into it.
And this
Last
is,
couple summers when we put the burn ban in, people have been 100% compliant. We've talked to one person in 2 summers after the ban was in, and they said, "Oh, I didn't know," and we put it up. So we haven't had any problem. People are very good about when they're told that, yeah, you can't do that. Sorry, didn't know. I'll put it up right now.
I would only mention that the wood-based charcoal does emit large embers into the air
You're all using those.
when we go to the charcoal grills. So
And we could be that specific. We could
bought
say
some
that.
of that by accident.
Well, that's basically you're using wood.
Right.
yeah,
Common sense. Because I know I've cooked with it too a lot.
Sarah, are you?
Oh, yes, thank you.
So my last question then, in Montana code, it states the word bonfire as well, if I recall, from looking quickly at this. So, any other quick questions or statements from the commission? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 4780.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Schwartz and a second by Mr. Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
For.
Commissioner Freeman.
For.
Commissioner Sandberg.
For.
Commissioner Mandy.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, one thing I should have asked at the beginning of the meeting was that before we go on to action items, is we have flip-flopped again the orders of public comments and city manager comments and commission comments, which we had switched it to previously to the public comment first, city manager comments, and city commission comments last. Okay, and we had talked about that some time ago. Can we switch it back, commissioners, to our past way of at this time, or right after action items, it should be public comment.
Yeah, as we have stated now on our agenda.
That's how it's taken.
That's how it's in the agenda.
Not on mine, on the,
Oh, that happens.
that's,
Yeah.
okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, I thought we were pretty, that was pretty well established.
Isn't that weird? Okay, so everyone's okay with what you have on your agendas. All right,
That's
I
all.
don't, so we don't ignore everything I just said.
Right.
All right. And tonight we have one action item A, to discuss the downtown project bid process. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just an update on where we are in the process. No decisions required this evening. We did have the bid openings. We've opened all the bids. We've gone through and are in the process of verifying that the bid is qualified. And I think TDH has come back and recommended that we can award the bid. Is that correct, Shannon?
Yes.
Yeah. So TDH has recommended that we award the bid to COP Construction out of Billings. They came in at, make sure I get this correct, just over 5% over what the expected cost was. It's broken down actually into 3 schedules for the downtown work. 2 of the schedules came in at 5% over, and 1 of them came at 8% over. So we are currently going through and making sure that we have the funding correct so that we can get all the correct amounts into the thing. The street work, 9th and 10th and 6th and 7th came in quite a bit over what we expected. Unlikely that we'll be able to fund both of those projects this year, so we're going to concentrate on the downtown streets project. And the low bidder came in about $150,000 lower than the next closest bidder. So it's a good company that has quite a bit of work out there right now. So yeah, so we're pretty pleased with that particular bid. So the next steps in the process will, once we get this, the funding squared away and make sure that that's all ready for you, we will bring back these professional services agreement before you so that we can assign that to the low bidder and we can move forward from there. So you should see that. Hopefully we can have that ready for the next one. Chandler is going to be 2.
We're shooting for March 6th.
Yeah, so we're going to try to have that in front of you on March 6th with all the information for the construction contract.
That's a big break ground March 7th, right? Yeah.
We'll try to get them out there as quick as we can.
Any questions from the commission?
So in the other, the 6th and 7th Street, is that what the one you said that was way over bid?
Yeah, there was the water work and then the sewer work as well on 9th and 10th.
What area was the bid overall? I guess I'm curious.
The asphalt work was really the driver on that one, is that correct, Shannon? That was a lot of it.
It was a combination of the water services. Believe it or not, the average price for the water service lines, 1-inch poly lines, was the same price as putting in an 8-inch water main, which really surprised everyone involved. And the street replacement work was pretty considerable. For those that aren't aware, there's about 12 to 14 inches of concrete underneath both 6th and 7th Street. So the cost to saw cut, remove and replace, dispose of that concrete was considerably higher than we anticipated.
So when we came up with our anticipation, what were those figures based on? When we decided we obviously had a number in mind. Where did we come up with that number of what it would cost? Mr. Cardos, sorry.
So TDH does that work for us. We're the ones that came up with it. So here's some examples. For the Schedule 1, we estimated 1.5 million. The bid came in at 1.5 million. So they're about 80,000 off on that particular spot. But 5%. The Schedule 2 was 641,000. It came in about 50,000 high at 695. And the last schedule actually came in lower than the engineer's estimate by a couple of thousand. Unfortunately, that's the lowest. It was a $47,000 estimate, $45,000 bid. So that's where most of the changes came. So I think it was mainly, so that's the downtown portion.
Right, I'm thinking 6 and 7 where it was really off the mark.
I think it really came down to they put a much higher premium on disposing that concrete than we expected them to. I don't know if that's because they were worried about what else was in the concrete, or I think there was some uncertainty. Additionally, when we initially bid it, we were expecting some cost savings because we were combining the downtown project with the rest of the projects. Out of the, let's see, 6 firms that did the work on 6th and 7th and 9th and 10th, only one of those firms did the downtown streets. So we weren't getting the cost savings we expected out of that because they weren't bidding both projects.
And so what was the percentage over budget that we on those?
I don't have that number in front of me. Do you know what it was, Shannon?
Well, the low bidder for 6th Street was 462,000, and our engineer's estimate was 321. So we were about $150,000 off.
About 25–30% on.
Yes.
So what conversations are we having with TDH then, as far as, I mean, if we're relying on them to put this information together for us and we're budgeting accordingly, and we're missing by 25 or 30%, we can't continue to operate that way.
So one of the things we've done is, once this bid is finalized, once we have awarded the contract, I've asked TDH to go back to each of the companies that bid and see what drove their price difference. To do a little bit of research and get some data on, okay, we expect you to bid here, you bid here. What was driving that cost? So we're gonna go back and do some market research and see really what was driving the difference between the two.
Okay, great. And you'll get back with us with that information.
Yeah, if you'd like it, we can certainly provide it to you.
Yeah, I would love to hear that because we've got a lot ahead of us, and if we're going to be doing budgeting, we need fairly accurate estimates before we go out for bid, and it's concerning.
Yeah, and it seemed to be
Huge change, huge fluctuation.
And it seemed to be combined to that 6th and 7th and 9th and 10th Street projects. The downtown streets came in within just over 5%. So there was a significant difference between the projects and the accuracy of the estimates.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what's driving, like you said. Combination of the asphalt on top of the concrete, so you can't separate it out.
And then we'll also find out, why many of the firms didn't bid for the downtown streets. So they just overextended if they're that busy, or if there was something. Take historical downtowns generally kind of steer people away. But we'll find out for sure what that was.
Here at the end.
Yes.
Thank you. Other commissioner comments?
I just had a question. I didn't catch the name of the construction company in Billings.
COP. I don't know, is it COP or they call it COP?
COP.
They call it COP, I guess. Not COP.
I have one question on what were the planned streets? Which blocks? Sorry, not streets, blocks.
For the downtown streets?
No, the ones that then was,
6 and 7.
yeah,
6th and 7th and 9th and 10th. They were actually water
How
and sewer.
far?
They were water and sewer projects, they were street projects.
Calendar till Clark, I believe.
Yeah, Calendar to Clark.
Guys
Oh, guys.
Geyser, okay. So pretty big
Yeah.
projects,
Yes.
really, or big areas. Okay.
And that was basically replacement of old infrastructure.
Yeah.
So,
7th Street especially, I think it's
well, if those estimates hold, that does have a big impact on what we're going to replace in the next decade.
pushing the power.
Do we have any public comment on action item E? Alright. So moving on to public comment. Please state your name and address.
Information.
Let's go on. Do we have?
Yeah.
We have a pen.
Yep.
We read into this here.
I think you can raise it.
Yeah, raise it up. I won't be saying this one.
Crank it down there a little bit.
It's kind of like one of those dishwashing practices. Wait for the water. So my name's Bill Stevens, and I live right here, 101 North Ave, just a block down from town, close to there. Excuse me, I don't know how this is gonna go. This is something that's been bugging me for a long, long time. And I'm gonna try to be not angry, and I'm also gonna try to be not disrespectful. I have an exhibit here. Can it be broadcast off of your deal there? If I give you this sheet of paper, can you broadcast it up on the screen?
No,
Okay, fine. This is a serious matter, and it affects everybody in town. It affects everybody in the county. It affects everybody in the state, and everybody in the world. I want you to look on my shoulder, see what's You all remember Mad Magazine? A clever satire. It was pretty famous for publication in the 60s and 70s and 80s. They still publish. I took this out of the magazine, made a copy of it. Mad Magazine redesigns the U.S. map. I want you guys to notice what Florida is. In case you hadn't noticed, Florida is the trigger. Now you know what I'm going to talk about. You know what you guys are going to hear about because you've already been hearing about it since Valentine's Day. The kids in Florida are not going to put up with this any longer. We're plenty tired of college and Congress. We're plenty tired of the NRA holding sway over public safety. To use Mr. Cargill's phrase, what was the danger of public health and right, so what? So we're facing that. We're facing it here in Livingston, and I don't want to talk. I want to be talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, like you all been doing. I'm not blaming you guys, but what's been going on around here with you over the past 40 years with the talk. This needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved right straight away. And what I'm going to ask of you guys, in all seriousness, in order to protect the kids down at Park High School, and up in Wilson, and Garden, and everywhere else in this county, this is the issue of prohibition, or declare prohibition, however you guys go about doing it here, get your microphones and make it law. Prohibiting the sale of AR-15s at the gun, down here at the gun shows, bump stocks, and high-level magazines, the 30 round magazines. You've heard all of it. You've heard the pros and the cons. You guys have heard both sides. The anti-gun control and the pro-gun control. You hear it all the time. But when you heard that massacre down there in Florida just recently, how do you feel about that? There was nothing worth getting up and standing up and cheering for. I noticed you all lowered the flag out here for a couple of days, and that's real good, because that, you recognize the loss of life and you recognize the grief that the community's going through, but it don't prevent a damn thing. There's plenty of flags been raised, lowered about this town and this country, that is, and it hasn't prevented anything. And the chatter don't prevent anything. And when you got the college and Congress saying it's time to talk about it, that's no get done in perpetuity. And don't you think, you guys know that it needs to be tended to. Huh? I know it needs to be tended to. What do you guys think? It needs to be tended to. I don't know how you guys want to be branded, but I think you guys ought to vote. I think you ought to vote tonight on this issue. I think before I leave, if you guys wanna run me out of here, you're welcome to do that. Let's say, I'm running out of things to say anyhow. I don't need to speak about this. You guys already got sentiments on it. I know you do. So, let's stand up. What do you say? Our county could be a hero. Livingston could be a hero. All of you guys could be heroes right this very minute. By declaring illegal sales. AR-15s, bump stocks, high velocity, high capacity magazines. Some of you guys, not many of you guys as old as I am, I've been to war in Vietnam, I can see what them things have done. We used, you know, Mr. Carlos. M16, pretty similar to the AR-15. You try to loose on a person and there ain't no bush looking on man disgusting. And that's what happened to them children down there in Florida. It happened in Sandy Hook and elsewhere around the country. And it happens all the time. And the flags get lowered to half staff. Congress holds them over to silence and a prayer, and then we wait 6 months or 6 weeks and it happens again. So what do you think? Somebody's got to talk to me. What are we going to do about it? Answer. Please answer.
I'll start. Firstly, I don't want to negate anything you're saying because it's valued. But really as a commission, we can do only what we can do or within our community as far as ordinances, as far as the everyday work of the city. And I think what you're talking about is a big issue. And it's really bigger than just this moment and this commission. But I value your statements and I'm listening. I'm an educator.
This moment is now. And if this ain't the time to talk about it, there is no time to talk about it. So if we walk out of here without saying any more, everybody is at risk. All our kids are at risk. The entire high school is at risk. We need to hear more than this ain't the time. We need to hear more than that. Thank you for your input. But I want more. I want something concrete. Who's next?
So I'm gonna give you a wholly unsatisfying answer though. They can't do anything about it. The form of government that we are under by the Montana Constitution has a certain number of authority that the state has granted the city. It's very clear and it's very limited, and this doesn't fall within that authority. Doesn't mean it's not an important issue. Doesn't mean that they wouldn't want to do something about it. But I'm just going to tell you the truth. They cannot, no matter what they want to do, pass a law that does that. It would be unconstitutional in the state of Montana.
Let me tell you what the state of Montana did about 3 or 4 years ago after I think it was after that kid in South Carolina shot up that church, killed all the black folks. He went in there and he wanted to start a race riot. Remember that business here? Or it might have been after Sandy Hook. Washington, D.C. was holding some kind of a conferences, and the Congress was talking about doing things such as more intense background checks and limiting the size of the magazines. You know what I'm saying? You remember that? 1918, 2012. Well, it finally got to the Florida Senate, and there was some voting on it. And coincidentally, as the same was going on in the vote in the Senate, they was doing business up in Helena. And this is what they decided to do in Helena. Anybody remember how they done that? They voted to pass a law, and they passed a law. They passed a law which stated something to the effect of, whatever law gets passed out of Washington, D.C. that restricts the use of firearms in Montana, we're going to avoid enforcing that law. So you know what they did? You know what they did? They passed a law against a law that didn't even exist. So when you talk about mental health issues versus gun control, I'd say that was a mental health issue. I think that was pretty goddamn, pardon me, I think that was pretty totally insane to pass a law against a law that doesn't exist. Out of fear of who? Who are they afraid of? Who is everybody else afraid of? Who? You just discussed to me that you don't have the authority because somebody said you don't have the authority. Individuals are reminded that public comments should be limited to items over which the commission has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. Who passes the Green River ordinance? Who's behind that? Whose responsibility is that? I mean, seriously, does Helena say you can't knock on the door and the full brush man can't come to town? What's the deal? I think you guys are passive on this. You guys you don't want to be a hero. If you want to be a hero, if you want to get not necessarily notoriety, what are the kids going to do? The kids are going to outshine you right down to the ground. They're going to go to Washington, D.C. There's going to be 1 million kids in Washington, D.C., and you're going to say, Jesus Christ, how come we didn't support them kids? Answer. Sarah, you know something. You got Sarah. You're.
I'll say my
I'm
comments
not
for.
gonna-
Yeah, sure. I know you guys have heard enough from me.
So
Well, no,
You want to hear any more from me? I
Well,
understand that.
here's
We
the-
just can't debate.
And we can't
We're
debate on
not
the public comment
Yeah.
either, which is, we can't discuss items that we can't take action on items that aren't part of our agenda.
All right, how about the police department? The police department is going to have, first responders are going, one of these days, it happens here. First responders are going to have to do something about that. And first responders suffer as much, don't you think, as much as the parents? You walk right in there. You walk right in there and have a human body stuck to the wall.
Well, we appreciate, again, like Mike said, like Sarah said, like I have said, we as an entity can only do so much.
You could go against,
According to
you could go
state
against
law.
that authorized. You could go against that and set a precedent. Why not just set a precedent?
So we're gonna move on from this moment.
I know what that
We are
means. That
listening.
means you're showing me the door.
Please.
Listen, I'm gonna write a letter to the editor. Because I like to write letters to the editor when I get hot. Right now, I'm just about hot enough to fry chicken over this issue. And you guys ain't cooling me off one little bit. But I'm gonna towards off a letter to the editor. And I told you I don't want to be disrespectful. But I'm gonna let them know
I'd like
that
to
there
add
ain't no
something.
heroes in this commission,
I'd like to add something.
please.
I have an FFL federal firearms license.
Yeah.
I did the same tour you did.
Yeah, okay, welcome all.
Thank you. Good job. I think that Livingston is ahead of the game because they have a school resource officer at the school present. I think that's square one in helping to solve the problem. There's over 300 million guns in this country.
Yeah.
A bump stock to me is absolutely a useless piece of junk.
It's an abomination.
I don't have a bit of problem with that. I would like to solve the problem, and I think all this other stuff is nibbling around the edges. If you look at most of the major shootings, publicity-wise, almost every one of them, and this last one in Florida is like the poster event. There's been balls dropped by people all over the place. He got that gun legally. He should have never gotten it. There was a background check done on him. I do background checks all the time. People had reported him up and down, and my take is that there has to be a lot of tightening up on communicating with the FBI and the background check people. A lot of these shootings would have been headed off, a whole lot of them. The guy in Virginia who killed 32 people with 2 handguns, he'd been involuntarily committed twice. And that information never got to the background check people, and he got that gun legally. So I think everybody wants the problem solved. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. If you're never going to take and magically get every gun out of this country, all 300 million of them. They're not going to disappear.
That would be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
That would be pretty
But
difficult.
so I'm saying that in terms of a workable solution, the workable solution has to be that people communicate with the FBI background check people and background checks are done. And there has to my way, I think there has to be protection at the schools, at the churches. The guy who shot up the church in Texas, he was a felon, and the Air Force never reported him. And the reason his shooting stopped was because the neighbor to the church was an NRA. He was an NRA firearms instructor.
Yeah, chasing down the foot.
Right.
So that's the case of the good guy with the gun.
Yeah, and everybody should have a gun.
Hold water. Good guy with guns work to take care of that, don't hold water. But what you're saying is very good. However, it's like you say, the communication ain't there. The agencies ain't functioning.
Right.
So the kids are gonna take care of this issue, and you're not gonna like the result, but I know what the result's gonna be. And the only way to solve the problem is to revise the Second Amendment. And I'm not saying abolish the Second Amendment, but there's gonna have to be some revisions there. There's gonna have to be some revisions in interpretation. And these kids ain't gonna allow this to go on. I know you're tired here.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate it.
So, you remember, the next time this happens, you'll remember that Bill Stevens didn't lie to you. He ain't always wrong, but he's not right tonight. He's not always right, but he's not wrong tonight. Sorry for taking up so much of your time.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Please state your name and address. All right. My name's Jeanette Blank, and I live at 418 South Ninth Street here in town. I'm hoping this is something that the City Commission can participate in. So I am here just to bring up the topic of the proposed BLM lease lands that are in Park County. There's about 4,000, maybe 4,300 acres of BLM land that is going to be going up for auction for oil and gas leases in Park County. And I'm hopeful that you guys are well aware of that. Good. So I want to make sure that we have a conversation about that. I have worked for oil and gas industry for about 20 years doing permitting and regulatory work. So it'd be fairly hypocritical of myself to say no development ever. I drove here in a gasoline car, so we all need oil and gas, at least for the time being. But as somebody who has done environmental impact analysis for many years, I can say this: the Park County leases are it's just the wrong place for many reasons. There's a petition that's going on right now that Park County Environmental Council has organized, and it's a really great, very well-informed petition. There's over 850 people from our county and visitors that have signed that petition today. There's a lot of people very, very concerned about this in our community, people who love our community, to visit our community. And I wanted to just talk briefly about the actual environmental assessment that's been done out there by the BLM, and a bit about the process, so that people understand that we are right at the cusp of a very big decision that the BLM is about to make on whether to open up these lands or not for auction. So the BLM is going to be making a decision on allowing these leases to go up for auction on the 13th. And what that means is they have already done their environmental assessment. And once these lands go to auction, that means that if someone bids on them, they have every right to develop those minerals to the greatest extent possible. And I want to read you one thing from the environmental assessment. This is one of the main things that a lot of people are concerned about, is the possibility of fracking and contamination. Impacts to our river and our groundwater sources. So this is a direct quote from the BLM's environmental assessment about these Park County leases. And it says, oil and gas exploration development could contaminate aquifers with salts, drilling fluids and gases from other formations, detergents, solvents, hydrocarbons, metals, nutrients. They could change the vertical and horizontal aquifer permeability. That's how water moves throughout the aquifer. And increase hydraulic communication with adjacent aquifers. All right, so that's migration.
of contaminants into other aquifers. And I completely agree with this assessment. The EA goes on to say, these potential effects could be analyzed at the time, these potential effects would be analyzed at the time of receipt of an application for permit to drill. In the event exploration or development, site-specific mitigation measures would be identified to avoid, minimize potential impacts to water resources prior to land disturbance. In the permitting world, this is a total punt to deal with the potential impacts. And the thing is, like I said, once these leases go up for auction and someone buys it, this is a contractual agreement between the BLM and the leasee saying they can develop to the fullest extent possible. The leasee has bought that lease. So this, at the time of the application to drill, BLM has approved that project. So at the time of the application to drill, it's just kind of tweaking things a little bit. But the kicker here is that there's a significant lack of information about our subsurface geology in this area. I actually talked to the BLM geologist, had a little slight conversation with him at this information meeting last week, and he fully acknowledged that. I asked him, what formations do you think are gonna get targeted for this development? Because I wanted to go look up the well information from the Board of Oil and Gas Commission website to find out what's that water quality like. Was there dissolved hydrogen sulfide in the water that we're going to be putting up into the air around our town? And he said, we don't know. There's no seismic data in the area, so there's no. He's like, we don't know what the structure is down there. There's little information. So for this environmental assessment to say, well, we'll deal with all of those potential impacts at the time of the permit. You can't deal with the permit, you can't deal with the impacts if you don't know what you're going to be impacting, right? And hopefully I'm preaching to the choir here. So my point is that somebody at this information meeting, one of the residents here in town really said it well by saying this really opens the Pandora's box for Livingston and Park County with oil and gas development. I've seen some good development and I've seen a lot of really bad development because I'm out in the field in these oil and gas fields. And the one thing that is common across the board is that oil and gas development industrializes, it degrades the land, even if they're following everything to the T, it industrializes it, it degrades it. And if you do look at that EA, I think one thing that's a little bit misleading is that the BLM has, I think this is good, the BLM has recognized that there are too many potential impacts to allow surface disturbance on the BLM land. So they've said a no surface occupancy stipulation for all the BLM land in Park County, which when somebody reads that, they might be like, oh, that's good. But what that means is that all of that surface disturbance happens on private property right next door. And in the permitting world, that's great because permitting private property has the least restrictive regulations, requirements, and permits. BLM is about the next strict level, then you've got a little bit, there's a lot more analysis, there's more public comment involved, and then it goes on up into different state lands and federal lands that are more managed for forests and things like that. So I think that's a really important thing is that, and I've seen the difference between development on BLM land versus development on private land. You're looking at, everything from just the aesthetics are different versus noises. On BLM property, you have to have generators that are at a certain decibel, whereas on private property, no limit. You can have just, generators that blow your ears out. I think one thing that hasn't really been discussed is what to deal with the waste and produced water. So these types of wells produce a ton of water, right? Another big concern is fracking and little mini earthquakes that happen from now. Well, actually, a lot of those little mini earthquakes are happening from the produced water that's injected into waste wells, disposal wells. So I did a little I looked at the Board of Oil and Gas website today, wondering, well, where are some existing disposal wells around here? There's no disposal wells in Park County. There's nothing in Gallatin County, there's nothing in Broadwater, there's nothing in Sweetgrass. So the closest disposal well, which is actually an expired well that's on record at Florida Oil and Gas, is all the way out in Stillwater. And so these guys that want to develop here, they're not going to be making the money. That's not going to be economically feasible to go all the way out to Stillwater, right? So that's going to be another thing that comes along, our injection wells for waste. And oil and gas has a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're exempt from a lot of the hazardous waste rules out there. So anything that comes out of an oil and gas well, all those solvents, salts, acids, everything they use for fracking, they can put down a disposal well. We couldn't do that because that would be considered hazardous waste if we had that type of waste and we had it for some reason that was outside of an oil and gas development. But oil and gas development has those exemptions. So it's another thing to think about. This isn't just a couple little wells here and there. There's disposal wells that come along with it. There's gathering lines. There's a lot more to it. And I'll wrap it up. But I just hope that I would love to see the city commission write to our BLM, to Secretary Zinke, saying this is not right for Livingston. There's too much good economic prosperity that will go down the tubes with development like oil and gas in our county. So I will leave it at that. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeanette. Any more public comment? Money?
Patricia Grabo, 204 East Calendar Street. I'm piggybacking what Jeanette said first. There's a good article by John Allen Snyder on which she talks about the possibility of the Livingston City Commission and the Park County Commission going together and creating a zoning situation where this might not then occur for our community. So I would like to ask the commission to take a look at that article and take a look at and really research where your lines of authority actually are, because we were able to stop fracking up on the Bozeman Pass because of zoning that was put into place in Gallatin County. So I would ask the commission to really, it's going to be something that water and the effect of what we do on water is going to be affect us all. We've just spent $19 million on the water treatment plant, and that's we don't want to make things worse for the future. So I would ask the commission to please research this. And the other thing is, speaking of that, I just wanted to check back with the city manager and WET to see if they've ever come to find out how much the original budget for the Yellowstone or the Livingston Restoration Group was $2 million to mitigate the soil at the water treatment plant. That was what was budgeted. And WET did the budgeting, and I think I mentioned to you that I talked with Amy Reynolds, who is DEQ on this, and I said, the city has never been paid by the Livingston Restoration Group for that $2 million to mitigate the soil. And I said, frankly, Amy, that stinks. And she said, yes, it does. And so I just want to, I'm following up. I'm going to start writing about it. My dear friend, Gary Weisgerber, just died. And the only reason Gary Weisgerber is dead is that for 6 years, he drank the water at KPRK. You are now not even allowed to go into the KPRK building for more than 5 minutes. They knew at the time, the city knew, and the owners of KPRK knew at the time that Gary was working for KPRK as the voice of Livingston, that was carcinogenic water that Gary was drinking. in his coffee every single morning. And I think it's time that this city make sure that that settlement money, that $2 million, not go back to the COVID litigants, that it go to the citizens of Livingston, and that I think we're gonna have to figure out a way to address the issue of people like Gary, who've passed on, the families facing huge medical bills. And we can no longer be passive about this issue. We don't even have a commissioner on the Livingston Restoration Group board. And we always had a commissioner on that board, and the public works director is not.
I'm on that board.
Why you, well, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Well, this $2 million is critical. And our Livingston taxpayers should not have to pay this. And people like Gary's family should have, the city only got $25,000 from that settlement when they took $20 million and gave it back to the 100 co-litigants. There were only 40 when I was on the commission, and a lot of those people who are co-litigants have no property in the parsonage. So this is something probably the FBI should take up, but at any rate, to me, this city has an obligation to really get that money back to the citizens of Livingston. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No public comment? No more public comment, I should say. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two quick items for you this evening for city manager comments. One is actually more of a question. We've been doing some analysis on how we're paying our claims currently. And because of the way we pay the claims, we bring them before you, you approve them, and then we pay them. We're paying a significant amount of late fees. We've only been tracking it for a little bit now, but I'm estimating it to be about $10,000 a year in late fees. Because we get the invoice, we then put it in the package, we wait, and then we pay once we're done. We can modify that to switch it to more of the ratify for ones that come in. I would say it was the late fees, but you wouldn't see it. You would see it after it was already paid and then ratify that. So obviously, if you didn't approve of the payment that had already been made, it would just be a future lawsuit. So the question is seeing it ahead of time worth the money that's costing? And if it's not, then I can start doing some research with Jay and exactly how we would change the ordinance to allow us to pay the bills in a timely fashion so that it isn't costing them. If you're interested in that, I'd be happy to start that project.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I would say that my experience with the school district, it's state statute specifically states as well in the language that the board must approve prior to paying, but no school district with more than 500 students follows that ordinance because it's for the exact same reason. And I'm not, we were never written up on an audit for it either, so it's kind of standard practice. So I'm sure, I just bring that as a player reference. So
it is, and we were looking at, there's other cities that have also gone to that. Because of exactly what you're talking about, it's just the cost associated.
I would absolutely support it.
So, and then the other item quickly is just an update on the skate park and where we are in that construction process. We did open those bids also. Evergreen Construction was the low bidder on that one. Their current bid is $306,000 for the base bid price. The current standing of this is an estimate, I don't have the exact numbers for the skate park association, but they're around $250,000 of pledges and cash on hand, so they're short by about $60,000. Where that leaves us as a city is we have a couple of options. If the money was there right now, we would bring the contract in front of you on the 6th. They would sign it, and Evergreen's ready to start construction on the 12th. So the project is ready to go. The Skate Park Association right now is doing a fundraising push to try and get some of that. They're also looking at alternate funding means, if they can get a bridge loan, if there's some things they can do to get the funding needed to start the process. So we can do it a couple of ways as a city. I can bring it before you with the current funding, the pledges, and we can decide to delay at that point, or we can decide to float the money to the skate park and see if they would pay us back as we go. Obviously, not all this money is needed up front. I think that would really depend on how much that gap was left after they did the fundraising. Obviously, if it's still $60,000, that's not something we would do as a city. If they're down to $5,000, I think that's something we probably do as a city. So I can bring it forward before you on the 6th with where they currently are with the contract, and we can look at it at that point, or we can hold off until they have the complete amount raised. So that's kind of where we stand. It doesn't, you don't have to make a decision tonight, not anything you have to vote on, but just kind of as a, in the process, that's where we are. So, I guess,
If we're gonna present on the 6th, we do need to make a decision.
if I present on the 6th, but I don't have to present on the 6th. How long is the bid good for, Shannon?
60 days,
Yeah, so it's a 60-day bid, and when did it come out?
January 26th.
So we have 60 days from January 26th to award the bid. If we delay, yeah, so if we delay past that, then we'll have to go through a rebid process.
Well,
Quentin, you're on.
no, I'm not.
Who's Warren?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that it's an extremely active board, and I was really kind of amazed at some of the money they've got, not what they've been pledged, that they actually have, to the tune of like $25,000 and $30,000. And they're going to speak to some of those groups again. And I think it's, they brought up one thing to me that I hadn't considered. Bozeman has a 4,000 square foot skate park that was too small when they finished it. This is going to be about 10,000 square feet. And their feeling, and I'm pretty sure they're right, is that the skate park will actually attract a lot of outside of Livingston participants, which means more people, after they drop the skateboarder off at the park, they'll be doing something else around Livingston and changing the economy to the better. But my main observation is it's an extremely active board and an extremely committed board. So I wouldn't have any reservations about supporting them. Thank you.
I would like to see it sooner than later.
I'll go along with that.
We've been going through this process a long time. I agree, I've been
So
watching
close.
this, we're so close. I think they'll get there, I'm hoping. Maybe it's the hopeful part of it, but
One additional piece of information is that's for the base bid. There is the additional feature that was pledged by Jeff Mint. And he has sent us confirmation as a city that he will absolutely stand by that. So if we get the base bid amount, there'll be an extra $54,000 for another feature on there. And so it'll be even larger than the base amount. So if we can get to the base amount, we'll get the full additional as well. So
and that's the goal, right?
that's the goal off the list.
So is that enough from us as far as information and?
Yeah, I'll bring it before you where we're at.
So my question is, in communicating with some community members and folks that have served on the board in the past, is it possible to reduce the park to meet the current funding that they have? Because I know I've only been on the commission for years, but the amount in the bank hasn't really changed over those last couple of years. So my concern is, why is that not changed? And then what are the expectations that they will meet that goal when we've kind of been stagnant for so long? And that's a concern. And so instead of, children suffering who are being promised this park by the organization, is it a way to get it built and just scale back because of the funds that we have to actually get something out there for the kids to use?
The simplistic answer to that is no. And the reason behind that is because it's a state park and it would have to be completely redesigned. You can't just lop off the end of the features.
Well, I was just like, you were referring to Jeff's bowl. I'm just wondering if there's a feature like that that can be taken out in the existing drawings without having to just,
Not really. It would probably have to be completely redesigned because it's going to change the subgrade work and the drainage and the side the site, the fill to get to the proper height. It's gonna change the biggest problem is gonna change the geometry of the features themselves, because they're, obviously designed to pretty tight tolerance as far as being able to come up over the features and down on the other side on the lips. So I wouldn't be comfortable with just lopping anything off. We would probably have to go completely back to a redesign if we were gonna make it small.
So I guess my reservation would be, why is the fundraising been so stagnant, yet they've been so active?
There is a reason for that. A lot of these organizations only give grants once a year. So I know Park County Foundation, and there's some others in there that had given large sums of money. They only do that once a year. I think that's at least part of the situation.
So they're going back to the same people asking for more.
And others, but yes, they are going back to some of the larger contributors plus new. So the last couple of days, they've had a ad in the Enterprise looking for new sources of money.
And I think, and obviously I haven't been involved in this nearly as long as many of you, but I think part of it may have been the lack of forward progress. I don't think anybody knew where we were in the process and didn't think they really saw us moving forward. Hopefully with a no kidding this amount goal and we can start construction in March, it'll inspire people to be a little more confident in their donations.
That's been part of the problem.
Another thing that I have learned from checking in on this project every 6-8 months with various board members in particular is, Skaterpalooza, there was 0, and that was 2 years ago. And so to be where we are, this would be the 3rd Skaterpalooza this spring. But it has moved up enough where I felt confident as a commissioner supporting this project, because every year you could see a little bit more, and it took a while and it's taken a long time, but I feel confident in that. I've seen that progress, and about 6 months ago, I talked to one of the board members for a long time on the phone about where they're at, and they had just received some of those major grants. They happen to be in that timeline of what Warren's talking about. So I don't know if that makes it any better, Sarah, but I feel like I've been kind of focused on it and through the years, and I'm seeing growth, or I would be concerned too.
No, I've heard from a lot of people, many phone conversations. But I guess maybe I need clarification. And I think we all support the concept of the park, but when you're referring to support, what do you mean by floating on a loan?
No, financial support. I've seen that grow through the years, and each year they've added and they updated me on them, funding, raising numbers at that time. And you can see it if you look on the spreadsheet. You can see where money is coming from or came from and is waiting. And so, and you can see also the dates and when, the process or the progress it's had. And so as far as future and floating, potentially some of the funds, yes, we'll find out some
So that's what
recommendations as well.
I'm just trying to seek clarification. So what you're saying as an individual is you could support the city floating a loan, thinking that they would actually be able to pay it back if we needed. Or I'm just trying to understand what you mean by support. Do you mean financial support?
Support moving forward with the project with it not being 100% funded. I would like it to be mostly funded, almost all the up to 100%, as close as possible, because obviously we can't float a huge loan. That's just not what we should be doing. But what we have started and where it's at, it's worth getting very close to, financing it completely in the next month or two. You know, and how that looks for us, I don't know yet, because I don't have all that information, but good question. Any other comments on skate park, anything?
And again, just for clarification, sorry. Just because I get asked this question all the time, and it's back to the whole subcommittee culture that we have created. So it's not the city's project of the skate park. It's a bunch of independent individuals who wanted to create a skate park, made a proposal to the city who said, yes, if you raise the funds, you can build it on city land. Do I have that right or no?
That part is correct, but we are also going to be the ones letting the contract.
So the contract will be with the city of
The
Livingston.
contract will be with the city of Livingston, yes.
Pass.
So if we start the project without all the funds, we're on the hook if they don't have them all by the time we have to pay.
That's what I think. Okay.
Yes.
Just clarify.
If that was the point you were going for?
Well, it wasn't, not just that point, but, a lot of community members recently that I see in the public are, you know, blaming the city for, not helping with the funding, or somehow it's the city's fault that we haven't quite met the financial threshold to build the park. And I think it should just be reiterated that it's similar to the work that Mr. Dickerson did with the city soccer fields. That was all independent fundraising by a nonprofit.
In the tennis courts?
In the tennis courts.
In the water park?
Yeah.
Yes. It's the exact same model, so.
Just want to make sure, have that on the record.
Sounds like this is really Livingston, some of what you're saying.
Well, I just, you know, hoping for an opportunity to set the record straight.
Yeah.
That we all are in support, that it was an independent group of individuals who started the process and are still in control of the process and the finances.
Yes.
Well, the city's already committed in-kind work, they committed time. And with the whole project and the planning and the bidding, and they've also committed the land. And that's a big commitment for the taxpayers in the city.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Cardinal?
That is all for me.
Commissioner comments? And one thing before we start. So one of the things that we can do then is discuss or clarify anything, and that's just for the, maybe warn you because you're newer. If statements are made by public comment that you'd like to address at this time, it's also a time we're doing that. Okay, I'm encouraged to do that. We started discussions on that in December and in November. Yeah. Okay. So you're up.
Well, I would like to definitely speak about the whole firearms gun issue. I don't think the person in the country, unless they're really out of sorts, who wants to see one more person murdered. I think, and we saw it tonight, I think that the emotional level for this far supersedes the logic. And that's a huge problem. There are ways to solve it. And you're never going to 100% solve it because nothing of criminal nature gets 100% solved. I think it can be very much reduced. The first one that pops out like unbelievable is the need for people involved in the mental health field and in the legal field to report people who have a problem. Almost every shooting that's gotten national attention has had huge lapses of where the existing system hasn't worked. again, the shooter at Virginia Tech had been institutionalized twice, and he passed the background check. I'm not saying there shouldn't be a background check, there should. But if the system doesn't know the situation of the individual, nothing's going to get accomplished. And going after a particular weapon, and I'm not a proponent, I don't even want to go down that road. That's not the solution. The solution is way better communication with the background system, the background check system, I'm sorry. Another option, and we have one, thank God, in Livingston, is there is a school resource officer. The real cliche about the good guy with the gun and the bad guy with the gun doesn't mean anything if the good guy with the gun is incompetent. So someone trained and competent, i.e. the resource officer, I think is a huge detriment. Otherwise, it's the proverbial fish in a barrel, which I think is horrendous. I've been shot at, and I can't imagine being shot at, not being able to shoot back. That's a huge fallacy. The fact that there shouldn't be any gun in school to protect the children is absolutely insane. Again, it shouldn't be anybody, or it should be someone highly trained. There should be better security at the schools. There's a lot of things that should be immediate protective actions versus, well, let's start trying to round up whatever. Connecticut put I forgot what the law is, but it's pretty heavy duty. If you don't turn in your 30-round magazines, and I'm not even going to go down that road either, there's going to be some kind of a heavy-duty action. Well, they figure they got about 1/10 of them. So my point there is getting hardware off the streets isn't going to work. I mean, you can, as Timothy McVeigh found out, you can kill a lot of people with explosives. You can kill a lot of people with an 18-wheeler. You can kill a lot of people with a firearm, too. But I don't think the place, there's a lot of sensible starting points that would help immediately versus attacking it from a way too abstract a technique. And I would be happy to talk to anyone who can discuss the matter without reverting to adolescent cliches at any point, because I think it is a problem and it has to be solved. Thank you.
Sarah? In regards to the BLM leasing, Warren and I were both at that meeting last week, and I would be in support of submitting a letter of concern to our representatives in regards to the proposed leases, realizing they're in the county, but they would affect our community. And I'm not sure how anyone else feels, but I know we're up against a deadline that, is it March 12th? So they have to be.
That's the decision. The decision's made on the 12th, so the sooner that any of those comments could be submitted, the better.
Yeah. Which also then, which is one part of the battle. The other part of the battle is private owners owning their own mineral rights. And I'm not sure how that situation is handled or discussed. And I'm not sure how many people are out there that have their own mineral rights as well, but, there are, what can we do to help maintain the integrity of our environment? BLM is one issue, but there's also the jurisdiction of, private owners with their own mineral rights and what they do on their property, which I'm not sure if any of the zoning requests coming through with that Patricia referred to with John Allen. I'm just not familiar with them enough, but anyway, it was a very informative meeting to attend. So not sure if anyone else feels in support of that.
Yeah, I'm supported. I'm for it.
And I don't know if we do it as individuals. I think or as the commission without, I don't know how that works in our realm of.
We have consensus, I would say
We can
do it
request,
as a group.
we can request a letter be,
So I'm sure
Written
Park County
or-
Environmental Council has something that
I know that,
they could draft and we certainly sign on to.
I believe the county already submitted one, correct? Does anyone know for sure?
I don't know, I hope so. I don't know for sure though.
And we certainly could just change it. Heading on that.
Are they accepting comments from anyone, or does it have to be people affected by the leases?
It's for anyone. This is Jeanette Blank again. I think one key point to make that you guys could make as city commissioners is that because they don't know what is in the subsurface or what formations would be targeted, they don't know where those formations are relative to underground sources of drinking water. And we have at least two, let me look up the word for you. There are at least, it's our reservoir for drinking water here. It's protected source water. And I think that would be an excellent thing to point out because those are actually protected. That's why you have to do your water quality testing as a city, and you have an obligation to make sure that stays safe. So there are the BLM has identified 2 source water protection regions within Park County, within the area of assessment, as well as multiple groundwater wells, and the Yellowstone River, obviously, as well. So those source water protection regions is a legal delineated area for city drinking water sources.
Yeah, there's no guarantees how that'll affect our aquifers.
isn't there also a city property near the,
Sort of. So one of the city owns, and I have no idea why, maybe some of you have a history on this. The city owns half of the parcel with the county. That's on Myers Road on the other side of 90, on the south side of 90. I have no idea why we own that or how we came to own it, but we do own it half with the county. So I think your options as the commission are multi. You can obviously send it as individual residents, that would be fine, but we have all the power of the city behind it. If you wanted a commission-approved letter to go to the BLM, I would suggest having someone who knows what they're talking about drafted, whether that's Jeanette or the PCDC. I would send out a request to have somebody that's smart on this. I mean, I can certainly draft one for you, but it's not going to be very good because I know many things, but environmental engineer is not one of them.
That was gonna be my suggestion as well, like for environmental.
And if you'd like to go that, and if you'd like to go that route, then I'll work with whoever you designate, and I'll bring you a draft on the 6th for you to vote on as a group. And then once you vote on that, then we can send it up to BLM, and that'll have the power of the commission behind it. We can do that either just as a commission interested in what's going on outside of Livingston, or as property owners that are affected by the leases. So
can you bring the letter to us earlier or send it to us and then we can have it for review
sure,
and do feedback though one-on-one with you?
sure. I can send it out as soon as we get a draft, and then obviously the question there is if you want to edit it probably should have this group.
Sure.
Right, should only have it during the meeting,
But having time to,
but to look at it and review it, absolutely.
Because time is of the essence.
Yeah, I think PCEC,
Or genetic.
or genetic, well,
or
yeah, either one.
something like that.
One thing I would offer is, I wrote a 2.5-page comment to, and I didn't submit it to PCEC, but I did send it to BLM field office, the state office, and also Secretary Zinke and the state governor and our governor. And I could forward that to someone. It has a comment about just that it's, you know, our fear in Livingston with oil and gas development across the bench. There's a comment about the oil and gas, the phrase that the quote that I read during my previous comments about the environmental impacts. There's a comment about air quality, and then there's also a comment about a secretarial order that Zinke just signed about trying to enhance and preserve large game habitat and connectivity, which our areas in Park County would definitely fall under. So what I could do is forward this letter to somebody on the commission, and then if you guys wanted to pick and, you know, kind of paraphrase that, and if you wanted me to look at it just to make sure that technically that it's, you know.
why don't you forward it to me and then I'll help.
Yeah, and you can kind of make it your own, but I think it's got kind of some,
It's got the information that we want.
yeah, it's got some,
Technical.
yeah. Exactly. So I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Sarah, you still have the floor.
And just briefly on Bill Stevens' comments today, I'm just curious how we can be supportive and how we can help invite change with the situation. And with what Warren's stating is, I would assume with the school district in our community and with the Office of Public Instruction, they have mandates for things such as counseling, and they have their requirements. I would hope the state's taking a good look at what's going on, Office of Public Instruction, and would it be beneficial as a commission to communicate to the Office of Public Instruction to help implement tools and resources available, such as metal detectors, which I know we don't have in our schools, which could be a step in the right direction. Training, etc. You know, I don't know. I haven't heard the Office of Public Instruction making a statement, or I don't know, Joel, if you've heard anything, but perhaps we can be supportive in that manner. If, you know, Warren, too, if you had any suggestions of, you know, I know you had mentioned some, you know, background checks, but you know, we do have a school resource officer and metal detectors in the school. Anything that we could help support.
I'll tell it when it's my turn. I'll
Okay.
give you a few comments on that.
And then on a community-based recognition, I received a phone call last week from a lady in the community who was telling me about Eileen Barham, who apparently has been taking care of the flowers in the triangle there by Sacagawea Park and the lagoon and the river, and has the flagpole there. And according to this woman, she's been volunteering for over 30 years. She would go over and plant the plants, and she would help water them, and she would weed, etc. And I believe she's in her early 80s and is not doing the work anymore. And the city has taken over the main responsibility of caretaking that parcel. So it was suggested that we recognize Eileen for her appreciation for what she has done for our community over the years. So I thought that I would just bring that up, and I spoke a little bit with Mr. Cardos just to see if the city may have done something already. but, which hasn't been done. So some of the suggestions Mike had that I thought were great is, you know, we could give her a plaque for her recognition and invite her to our next commission meeting, or our future commission meeting. Which I thought was a nice idea. But I wanted to bring it before you folks.
Absolutely. Sound good?
I think we should get a plaque and a plant.
She may not want any more plants, but no, I like the idea.
Seems like a logical thing to do.
All right,
It's
so
real hard to take care of.
So should we move forward with asking the city to help us get a plaque and plant
And follow.
flowers? And I've got the contact information I can get to you later.
And just a question on
Yeah.
that, since Sarah brought it up, who is maintaining it now?
The city's
It's maintained like the others.
One of our, like, one person comes in regularly.
It's just part of the roaming crew, just the same as they maintain the rest of the parks. It's just considered part of our park.
Pretty high quality, so, you know.
Great, thank you very much.
Oh, wow. As I'm sitting here, I'm getting philosophical. I'm in my early 80s, I'm still going, but it seems that the world is work in progress. I was born during the Depression. Second World War came. Korea, Vietnam. Kennedy was assassinated. His brother was assassinated. The guy that ran the trucking union disappeared. We never found him. We never got answers to any of these questions. And it just keeps going on and on and on. So, it all bears discussion, but as I say, work in progress because we keep facing similar issues, different names. And some of the things I hear are outrageous, other things make sense. So it's been a full life, and the stuff keeps on coming. So I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but that's where we are. So just after I'm sitting here and going through all this stuff, and it just what hour does it change? What day does it change? As long as people are involved, we're in trouble. So that's the only thing I can say.
I'll touch briefly on, my wife is a school teacher. And when it was the past week, before this shooting, they did go through active shooter training for, what is it, 2 days or a day and a half, 2 days? A day or whatever. And it's unfortunate we have to do that. And the last thing I want to see is my wife carrying a gun in kindergarten. That's not, more guns is not the answer as far as I'm concerned. I can, go on and on and on and debate this, and I'd love to have the debate. But I don't think now is, the proper time. But as far as Livingston schools is concerned, they are on top of it and doing stuff. They are proactive without waiting for this latest incident to happen. And then I'll yield. Yeah.
I am just going to clarify some of the information as well, that the schools are doing a lot, but it's not just the schools, and I think why I think it's important for us to talk about it tonight is that on day one of school this year, before students were there, before teachers were even there, and just administrators, we met with chief of police, with multiple entities within this community that are all about safety. They're the people who, as commissioners, are working with daily at, supporting our police, our fire department, But we had a meeting on how do we as a community and as a whole county work together to keep our people, all our people, our students and our teachers and the parents, everyone safe. So, and this was just this year. And it wasn't just because of, Wednesday. So a lot of people are doing a lot, and I don't think our community really realizes how hard the schools work with our safety groups throughout the county to make our situation safer. The other thing is that we do a lot of work with DFS. We meet weekly with DFS, the admin does, where our SRO, everyone is talking about mental health for at least an hour checking in on individuals. And that's just at the middle school. High school does the same thing. Elementary is doing it. So we're doing a lot of front loading and working with helping kids before they get to places of frustration. We also, I kind of wrote down some notes. Security in the buildings. I brought this up at the staff meeting today that I just did a walkabout the other day. It happened to be on Wednesday, but it was before the shooting. And I was checking doors to see if they were locked, and every single door was locked. So people are doing what they've been trained to do. We don't talk about all the details of it because you don't want the bad guy to know all your details, but we're doing more than people realize. And I, not just as a school employee am I saying it, but as a community member and someone who works closely with our SRO and our police department. We're doing a lot. And so I hope it helps people to feel a little safer. That's all I have to say. Any other comments before we move on? I don't mean from public. So the Livingston Commission, I need a motion. Thank you. Thank you.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Yep.
All in favor? I almost said roll call, please.
Okay.
All opposed? The meeting of the Livingston Commission ends at 8:15.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I know that. And I know. Yeah, but no, I know. But I'm just, in case you remember,